Welcome to the Total Soccer Show, and our review of the Champions League knockout round playoff second leg still flows right off the tongue. We were treated to some big continental bouts, and in the end, Man City didn't make the knockouts. Kylian Mbappe showed he's got plenty of clout as Man City stopped crying their hearts out. Italian clubs came in numbers abound, but in the end, none of them cleared the playoff round. Celtic fought a good fight, PSG showed their impressive might, Dortmund's light is still burning bright, and Benfica are through. But you didn't watch that game, right? Dynamic duo today. My name's Ryan Bailey. Joining me, it's your friend, it's my friend, it's the Graham Ruthven. You got the Taylor intro there, Graham. Hello.
Oh, hello, Ryan Bailey. How are you? Just the two of us today. I think the other two, Taylor and Joe, saw just how bad a round this was for the American players going out of the competition. They thought they'd boycott this episode and pretend it never happened.
Yeah, if you're Italian disposition, you might want to skip this one as well. It wasn't a great week for those clubs either. But a good week of action all the same, Graham?
I mean, I think it was. I think it was a good round of matches. I thought there were some really entertaining games where we had some of the smaller teams play great football and get through, like not to spoil anything, but Feyenoord, PSV, Club Brugge, Celtic played some really good stuff as well and pushed Bayern all the way. So I would say that is a tentative victory for the new format. Also, and I made this point the last time we spoke about the new format, one day we will stop talking about the new format and whether we like it or not. That is not today, though. But an argument after the league phase was that all the big teams ended up getting through. Well, they didn't, because they would have automatically gone into the last 16. There wouldn't have been this last 24 round. And now City, Juve, Milan and Atalanta have fallen through the cracks. So, yeah, I think this is a pretty notable improvement. I'm enjoying it this season.
Yeah, and I think we've got, is it fair to say, a greater diversity of nations through to the round of 16
Seems
as
that
well?
way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, the Netherlands are there very strongly, and Italy, notably or not. We'll come on to that later.
we will come on to that later, indeed. We could also maybe have a chat about how we feel about this this whole new format a little bit later on. But patreon.com/Total Soccer Show is how you can support us if you would like to do so. You can have bonus episodes, bonus videos, and access to our Discord server, where all the cool kids are hanging out, talking Champions League and much more. And if you want to see just the two of us on YouTube, you can do that. Link in show notes if you want to check out our episodes on the YouTubes as well. Graham, we should probably start off with probably the box office game of the round. Real Madrid will go to the Bernabeu, where they had a 3-1 win over Manchester City, 6-3 on aggregate. Bit of a meek exit for Man City in the end. Pep Guardiola kind of jokingly said they had a 1% chance of going through. I mean, after 4 minutes, that seemed like he was kind of onto something there. Kylian Mbappe
He was exaggerating, I think, with that 1% after 4 minutes.
Maybe so. Maybe he overestimated. But that it did feel like the contest was over fairly early in this one. City's earliest Champions League exit since they failed to get out of the group in 2012-13. Yikes. They suffered a bit in this one. Suffering seemed to be a theme, Graham, for Man City here.
Yeah, just on that fact about this being their earliest exit for, what was it, 12 years or something like that.
Yeah.
I had a look at did you look at the team that played when Man City went out of the competition that early?
Gosh.
The back four in particular was Maicon, Javi Garcia, Gael Clichy and Nastasic. I mean, you might have taken that back four, actually, the one that started against Real Madrid in this game, because this was dreadful by Man City. Just complete domination by Real Madrid in a way that I didn't actually expect. I thought we would get another game similar to the first leg, which was an entertaining end-to-end match where both teams are flawed, but also showed what they can do in an attacking sense. Now, obviously, Erling Haaland being injured for this match was a big factor, a big blow for Man City. He comes off. They were playing Newcastle at the weekend. Very impressive, actually, in a 4-0 win, which sort of suggested Man City were heading in the right direction again, kind of bolstered their hopes of going to Spain and getting a result in this match. But Haaland comes off with a knee injury. We didn't know how serious it was. Man City have been very tight-lipped before this game. Then he's not in the starting lineup. Guardiola says that he was close, but doesn't feature in this match at all. So maybe not all that close, actually. But that was a factor clearly in Man City's performance. But even still, I didn't expect City to be just so toothless and so passive. Like they were never in this game in any sort of way. We can talk about their setup. I've got some thoughts on their setups, on their setup that we can come to. But just on a fundamental basis level, there was no intensity and no energy to Man City. It was like they were just waiting for Real Madrid to score goals against them.
Yeah, there was a good line in Phil McNulty's report on the BBC. Losing to Real Madrid is an occupational hazard of the Champions League. Losing to Real Madrid by barely laying a glove on them is a sign of Man City's steep downward curve this season. It's not the defeat, Graham, it's the manner of the defeat, as you say. It does feel like there could be, maybe this is a catalyst for change for City. Maybe that point has already come.
Have they not
previously.
had that? They went like, what was it, 13 games without a win? Was that not the catalyst for change? They then spent 200 million euros in the transfer window. Notable that all three of those players, by the way, Nico Gonzalez, Marmoush and Kusanov, who had, I feel sorry for Kusanov, he had a rough one, playing out of position on the right side of the defence against Vinicius Junior, and obviously Mbappe doubling up over there as well. That's a rough gig. Felt a little bit cruel, to be honest, but he had another rough match, and I thought Marmoush barely featured. Man City really rarely got into the attack, and then Nico Gonzalez I thought had a poor match as well, looked really ragged. So yeah, Man City have some problems where even the solutions to the problems that they've signed now look like problems in themselves.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, Graham, they did miss Haaland in this one, but like Gundogan and Bernardo Silva just couldn't keep up, it seemed, in the middle. Kusanov suffering right back in this one as well. But it just seemed, the theme I tend to see with this Guardiola side recently is where they looked impeccably coached and impeccably well drilled previously, it just don't look like that anymore. It looks like there's headless chickens out there occasionally. Like the second Mbappe goal, where he simultaneously kind of sent Guardiola for a hot dog and also broke his ankles at the same time, which is brutal for Guardiola the way he tried to come across and cover. But he had to come across and cover because City were, if you watch the build-up, they were completely sort of shapeless. They were completely static at the same time as well. Like Vinny had like all the space. He was like, shall I take this ball? Shall I not take this ball? Shall I let it run? Because he had the time to do so. And because if you look at City's shape, they were all over the place at that point. It was a disaster class.
Yeah, I mean, that second goal in particular, Ryan, Real Madrid actually kind of getting a bit of a mess, whereas is it Rodrigo and Mbappe kind of, there's a bit of a miscommunication and what they kind of end up on top of each other, but there's so much space in that Man City defence, they still have time to sort it out, and then Mbappe does the quick feet and it's in the back of the net. Excellent execution by Kylian Mbappe, who was tremendous in this match. Goes without saying, you score a hat-trick in the Champions League against Man City, you've had a good game. But nonetheless, there was just so much space for Real Madrid to exploit. It felt like a really bad setup by Man City that never worked at any point of the match. I'll just outline some thoughts on how they were set up here. So it was Marmoush through the middle, which isn't really his best position. He can play that position, but you really want him as a second striker or cutting inside off the wing. Then it was Savinho, but in a central position. He was the closest to Marmoush rather than being out wide. Again, not his position either. And then in midfield, you had Bernardo, Gonzalez, and Gundogan. And none of those three players have the passing range to really disrupt a set Real Madrid defence. So that never really worked. The attacking setup never really worked. There was no width, because Josko Gvardiol, for some reason on the left side, seemed to be staying at home for the most part. He wasn't getting forward in the way that he normally does. And then on the right side, it was Kusanov, who certainly isn't someone who wants to get forward. He's a centre-back. I think Phil Foden might have been the one meant to get wide. He was maybe the player that was meant to provide the width. But he was having to come back to tuck into central midfield, out of possession, that is, so that Man City weren't being overrun in that central midfield unit. And then Man City never had enough sustained pressure for him to then get wide. They never had 2 or 3 passes in that midfield that would then allow him to spread wide. So it was a really ineffective setup by Man City. There was no pressing structure either from Man City, which is just bizarre to see from a Pep Guardiola team. They were poor on the ball, which is even weirder to see from a Pep Guardiola team. And they never really had the pitch spread far enough for them to have options in possession. This was just an absolute nightmare game for Man City. And you're playing a team in Real Madrid who they want to spread the pitch as quickly as they can. They want to get Vinicius and Rodrigo and Mbappe isolated one-on-one against defenders. And so it was a tailor-made opponent for someone to really expose Man City, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, it was. As you say, it's just a lack of structure, lack of organisation. Where City players, you'd expect them to look confident and know exactly what they want to do. They look bereft in this one, definitely. We should probably shine a bit more of a light on Real Madrid. Is another Champions League win inevitable for them at this stage? When they play like this, they are pretty unstoppable.
Yeah, they were ominous in this match. This match was a one-game rebuttal to my theory that you can't play that front four of Rodrigo, Bellingham, Vinicius and Mbappe, because all four of them were excellent in this match. I will say, I mean, to repeat this point, Man City gave them loads of space, and so that kind of leans into what they do as players. I think it's more difficult when you have a low defensive block, when they have to break down, even when they have to press, because Real Madrid are not really a great pressing team either. But yeah, they were pretty frightening in this match. And of course, I think this will be remembered from the Real Madrid point of view as the Mbappe match. As good as he's been this season, I think people have been waiting for that one game where he just completely dominates at a high level. He didn't do it in the Clásico. You remember that first Clásico of the season where he was offside like 200 times in the match, and he had some struggles at the start of the season. This was the first, and there will be more. This was the first Mbappe match for Real Madrid where he was just absolutely incredible. The third goal was, for the third goal, It's great from Mbappe, cuts inside, guides it into the far corner. City actually have players back in that moment. I counted like 5 or 6 players between Mbappe and the goal, or at least 4 players and like 2 other players around him. None of them engage the ball or affect the ball in any meaningful way in that moment. So, yeah, Man City made it easy for him, but you can't ignore the technical execution of Mbappe's play in this game. He is just a ridiculous player, and increasingly it feels like this is his team. He's taking over from Vinicius, who's not bad himself, but when it comes time for a defining moment in a match, it feels like Mbappe's the one that's going to produce it for Real Madrid.
Yeah, definitely so. Just to touch on the Man City travelling fans, the Stop Crying Your Heart Out tifo they had in the first leg of this, someone brought like a miniature version of it with them, which just a bit more embarrassing, really, isn't it?
Aged poorly, really, in this tie.
Yeah, not great. So Real Madrid we got the draw happening for all the European competitions on Friday. Real Madrid are going to face either Atletico Madrid or Bayer Leverkusen. I imagine both of those teams looked at this game and thought, don't fancy that. Yeah, that's going to be rough.
Do Atleti ever look at a team and think, don't fancy that? I think they might be rubbing their hands. Bayer Leverkusen, yeah, as good as they are, like Real Madrid, I think are on another level. But I would like to see a Madrid derby in the Champions League. It's been a while since we've had one, right? It's got to be like, I mean, obviously there was those 2 finals. I can't recall it happening since then. So yeah, let's have one of those.
Yeah, you might be right. We might get that if the draw treats us that way, Graham. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to Bayern Munich and their heroic win over Celtic. Not really. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to our Champions League review. Let's go to Bavaria, where we had Bayern drawing 1-1 with Celtic, but going through 3-2 on aggregate. Celtic's Champions League run ending in a fairly heartbreaking fashion. Graham, a 94th minute goal poked in by Afonso Davies here. Bayern-Dusel is the term that's often used in these circumstances in Germany. Sort of the luck that only Bayern get in the dying minutes of a game to get them through. But Celtic could certainly get out of this round with their heads held high, can't they?
Is there a Bavarian term for the lack of luck that Scottish teams seem to get in these moments? I mean, I'm not a Celtic fan.
Bayern that is, actually.
Yeah, that must be it. I'm not a Celtic fan, clearly, but I have to say, as this game progressed, I was very much rooting them on just to see some Scottish representation in the latter rounds of the Champions League. And as a Scottish football fan, I have just seen that moment, the Alphonso Davies equaliser, a million times before. Scottish teams never get over the line. And to make it matters even worse, Celtic conceded that goal and then had to listen to the can, which obviously Bayern Munich play in the Allianz Arena, which just rubbed it.
That T-Mobile T was loving it, Graham.
Yeah, but look, obviously it was absolutely gutting for Celtic in the end, but Celtic were outstanding in this match, and sometimes you can just tell early on that a game's going to go in a certain way. And Celtic, they started so strongly in this match. They had 3 big openings early on. There was the chance for Nicholas Kuhn at the back post where he has the shot cleared off the line, kind of gets stuck under his feet a little bit, doesn't get a huge amount of purchase on it, but nonetheless it's cleared off the line. Then moments later, like 10 seconds later, Arne Engels is played in behind, a nice little reverse pass, and he puts a pass across the front of goal. All it needed was a touch in the middle, someone just gambling on the ball coming across the 6-yard box. And then there was the attempted chip by Maeda when he really could have taken at least 5 yards more. He could have taken the ball 5 yards further forward, and he also had options on either side, so maybe that doesn't show in the, I can't imagine that was a particularly high XG opportunity, but there was the opportunity there to score a goal. And it was a really interesting setup by Celtic. Rodgers went with a front line of Jota, Maeda and Nicholas Kuhn, so it was Adam Ida who came out from the first leg. Ida's really the only orthodox centre forward that Celtic have at the moment. They sold Kyogo in January, who was their best attacking player. And so that really leaned into their threat in quick transition on the break, where you have Kun, Jota, Maeda, all of them are lightning quick, all of them want to get in behind. And it worked. Bayern looked really uncomfortable defending the space in behind their back line. I also thought it was a much more intelligent performance by Celtic compared to the first leg in their pressing, where they had pressing triggers and there were high pressing moments. In the first leg, they sort of sat back and asked Bayern Munich to break them down. And in the first leg, there were periods where Bayern just had like 80% possession, and it was too much, and they were going to find a way. In this game, they did do that, compact approach on occasion against the ball. But as I say, they were also pressing Bayern, and you look at the Celtic goal, and it was an image of what they wanted to do in this game. They unleashed Maeda. They used his pace to unsettle the Bayern defenders, which has happened previously with Upamecano and Kim and even Manuel Neuer. And he prods it through to Nicholas Kuhn. He somehow evades the tackle from Kim, and he finishes into the back of the net. And in that moment, I thought Celtic had a real chance, because Bayern had offered very little in that match, and Celtic's game plan was working perfectly.
Yeah, that was an exciting moment, wasn't it? When Desmaeda put on the Jets and put
honestly,
through there. Yeah.
I've mentioned him a number of times on this show. He has a superpower. It's a shame he's not a better finisher or just like a better all-round player. But as a presser, he's like a pressing machine. He's got to be one of the quickest players in the world. And Bayern over the two legs really struggled against him.
I think I mentioned this before on the show, but Celtic, like the most classically handsome team in the Champions League, arguably in European soccer as well. Like Maeda looks like a model. Most of them do.
Yeah, I mean Kasper Schmeichel sets the tone. I've always had a thing for Kasper Schmeichel. I don't know what it is. Yeah.
Well, he had a great game as well, didn't he? To be fair, Bayern had 23 shots in this and 10 on target. So Schmeichel certainly played out of his skin at the Allianz Arena this one as well. How inevitable is Bayern's progress, Graham, through this tournament? They've got the same potential opponents as Real Madrid in Bayer Leverkusen or Atletico Madrid. Obviously, Leverkusen, they're very familiar with, having played them very recently and competing in the title with them, and Atleti would be a pretty tall order for them too.
Yeah, I mean, not that inevitable to answer your question on the basis of this performance. You mentioned the number of shots there, and they did have a number of shots. I would argue that a good percentage of those shots were fairly harmless. As the game went on, Celtic, after the goal, they did have that one opportunity with Maeda with a header after the goal where they had their tails up at that moment. But after that moment, they got deeper and deeper and deeper, and ultimately Bayern were just asking too many questions. Obviously, it's a cross into the box that ultimately leads to the goal. And there were a couple of moments where Schmeichel had to pull off big saves. There was a save from Goretzka, and was that in the first half? I can't quite remember. And that was one of the few areas where Bayern were causing Celtic trouble, was when they were having a runner from midfield, like that second man run beyond the centre-backs and into the box, and Goretzka, that's exactly what he did in that moment. But it was probably the worst I've seen of Bayern Munich this season. I thought they were slow on the ball. Their passing was sloppy. As I've mentioned earlier, they didn't handle the pressure that Celtic put on them. I don't know who told Dayo Upamecano that he's a ball-playing defender. Because he's not. There's just yet more evidence of him not being good in those moments. I thought Joshua Kimmich, who is normally very good on the ball, to be fair, I thought he was ponderous when he had possession as well. So they, in a sense, they made it easy for Celtic. Celtic's game plan worked well against them. But the thing with Bayern Munich is they just have so much attacking talent, and that's ultimately what got them over the line here, where they've got a left back getting into the 6-yard box to get on a cross. Good Champions League round for former MLS players between Fonzie Davies and Julian Carranza. So in the what game was that? That was in the AC Milan game. Excuse me, I'm getting mixed up on which Italian teams have been knocked out here. But yeah, good weekend for former MLSers.
All of them except Inter. That's what you're going to remember there, Graham. Now you mentioned it with Bayern. Like, no one really stood out. You make a good point there. Like, obviously the back line, Upamecano didn't cover himself in glory. Stanisic or Kim really didn't either. Harry Kane didn't. I don't think he had a memorable one either. Well,
he comes off at half-time as well with an injury, which Harry Kane, there's a lot of discussion around Harry Kane in Germany right now, where he's got a load of goals this season, as he tends to do, but like 50% of them or something are penalties. He's not offering a lot in open play. I thought in both legs, even though he scores in the first leg, I don't think Harry Kane offered a huge amount against Celtic. So, there's a question mark over Harry Kane at the moment, but you just think between Musiala, Gnabry, Elise, who has been excellent this season for Bayern Munich, he's potentially been their player of the season, Jamal Musiala, you're getting Davies forward, like one of them is going to find a goal eventually, and that's what happened.
It did indeed. All right, Graham, any more in this game, or should we move on to some Italian action?
CCV and Austin Trusty had a good game. A lot of clearances. I think something like 17 clearances in the first 35 minutes of this game, which was a record for the Champions League. So had they got a clean sheet away to Bayern Munich in a knockout match in the Champions League, maybe Poch would have given them a chance in the USMNT lineup. But they conceded, so we've got to stick with Mark McKenzie and Tim Ream. That's the rules.
That's how it works. Yeah. Very good. All right. Very good stuff. As noted, Bayern will play either Leverkusen or Athletic, depending on how the draw falls on Friday. Let's go to the San Siro, where Milan had a 1-1 draw against Feyenoord, but they went out of the competition at the expense of the Dutch by a 2-1 deficit. Santiago Jimenez, easy for me to say, scored after a matter of seconds in this one against the team he played for in the group stages. How is that a rule, Graham? I don't understand how he's allowed to do that. Is that a thing?
15 days ago, or 15 days before this match, he was a Feyenoord player. But
yeah, are you not cup tied? Is that not a thing in Champions League? I guess it isn't because he played.
Not anymore. If it is, nobody told AC Milan.
No, indeed. We had a couple of interesting red cards from Serie A teams in this round. Theo Hernandez very much suffering one of them. 2 yellows, a very silly shirt pull, and then what transpired on replay to be a pretty blatant dive, which was, Graham, a massive call from the referee who was looking at that instant from behind. But like the right call ultimately to send Hernandez off in that one. He showed his true poop house colours, I'd say, in this game. Suffice to say, but interesting that his coach Sergio Conceição didn't blame Hernandez for this defeat. He said it's
Zlatan did though. I don't know if I saw the quotes from Zlatan.
Well, the closest Conceição, it's a big defeat for me, and I made many mistakes. I'm responsible for this defeat. Basically, Theo has given a lot to Milan, blah, blah, blah. I'm the one who's responsible. So, yeah, Zlatan might have felt otherwise, but it does feel like already there's a bit of pressure on Conceição based on this.
And to be honest, he's not totally wrong. It wasn't fully on Theo Hernandez, although he's the biggest factor for this defeat, because Milan, as you say, Rad, scored in the first minute through Jimenez. I thought they were in control of this match. They were creating opportunities. João Felix tested the goalkeeper a couple times. And Feyenoord were struggling to... In the first leg, they came out on the counter-attack. Obviously, Paxio scored the goal, was very dangerous. He wasn't really much of a threat before the red card, and Feyenoord as a whole weren't much of a threat. So it did feel like Milan were on their way through to the last 16, and then, of course, the dynamic completely changes with the red card, which was the right decision. It's a blatant dive. As you say, Ryan, good call from the referee, because I don't think for a yellow card, for a second yellow, they can use VAR for that moment. I think that has to be purely first take from the referee. He got it right. Theo Hernandez goes off, and Feyenoord came back into the game. They steadied themselves, had more of the ball, then obviously scored the equaliser through Carranza. But the changes from Conceição in this match were bizarre. Where I know Milan are down to 10 men, but ultimately it goes to 1-1. They need another goal. They need to attack. And he takes off Jimenez, the goal scorer, who's scored, two goals in 3 games or 3 goals in 4 games. He's had a good start to life for Milan. And their best, most reliable attacker in Christian Pulisic comes off as well. And then Milan crash out. So, strange decisions by Sergio Conceição to keep João Felix, and look, my opinions on Felix are well known on this show at this point. I'm not entirely sure what he does. But to keep him on the pitch over Christian Pulisic seemed like a mistake. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the goal comes after those substitutions, right? The equaliser, and then they try and throw on like Abraham and Chukwueze to try and... It's too little too late, right, at that point.
Yeah, but they still need a goal to go through, right? So they're at 1-0. They've only equalised the tie. So, like, in a way, the situation hasn't really changed. I just don't really understand. Like, Chukwueze at this point has he ever really done much for Milan? Like, he was a talented player. I was quite excited when he moved to Milan from La Liga, but hasn't been great. Tammy Abraham works hard, but compared to Jimenez, I think you would say doesn't really suit Conceição's style of play as much, and is limited. So strange changes, and I think he's faced a bit of criticism, Conceição, where you're absolutely right, Ryan. There was a game, I can't remember who it was against. It might actually been the last league phase match for Milan, where it felt like Conceição's job was already on the line.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine this has helped his case much.
No, indeed. We'll just see how things work out domestically for him. We should probably give some flowers to Feyenoord at this point. They kept their cool in this one after Milan went up so early in the game. And also, like in this competition, they've beaten Bayern, they drew with City.
Yep.
I mean, they lost to Lille quite heavily and Salzburg as well. But still, they did some good wins in the league phasing as well. And they're through to the last 16 of the Champions League for the first time since 2000. That's impressive.
Yeah. So this is a team that sacked their coach 9 days ago. Brian Prisk was sacked 9 days ago. They've got an interim manager at the moment. They were missing 5 starting players for this match through illness or injury, including their captain. They sold, as we've already mentioned, sold their top scorer to the team that they then faced in the Champions League, and they still got the win. So they credit to them. They are having a weird season, Feyenoord, where they are, I think, like fifth or sixth in the Eredivisie table right now. So domestically, they're having a bad season. Obviously, Arne Slot leaves in the summer. Replacing him hasn't really gone that well. But I mentioned this previously in the show. Prisk, while has struggled domestically and is now gone, in Europe, his sort of more counter-attacking style and attacking open space, the general consensus is that's actually worked for Feyenoord, where under Slot they were struggling to make that breakthrough. Weirdly, he leaves. They've made that breakthrough this season. So I think even if they stick with an interim manager till the end of the season, I don't know what their plans are in terms of hiring a permanent appointment. But I think they'll continue to play in this sort of quick transition style and get players like Paxao moving towards goal because it seems to work for them.
Yeah, definitely. And this stat, Graham, is big if true. This is the first knockout tie in this competition that Feyenoord have won since 1970. They won the European Cup in 1970. Do you know who they beat in the final, Graham? You do, don't you?
I don't. Who was it? Was it Milan?
It was Celtic.
Oh, of course, yeah. The year after the Lisbon Lights, not the Busby.
But it was at the San Siro, so they've repeated some history at the San Siro as well. So maybe if they follow that path, we will see some glory for Feyenoord. Anything more to say on this one, Graham, or should we?
Nope. I think we can move on.
Very good. Let's take a quick break after we let you know that Feyenoord will play either Inter or Arsenal in the next round. So, Graham, we've been denied the potential of a Milan derby in the round of 16 by virtue of Milan not going through.
That's probably good news for Milan, let's be honest.
That final matchup against Inter or Arsenal, how are we feeling about that? Have they got some chance there?
I mean, they've got a chance. I mean, both Inter and Arsenal will look to dominate the ball in that match, obviously have more top-end talent. Arsenal at the moment don't have like a single forward. So actually, maybe it's Arsenal that Feyenoord would want. Maybe that matchup would suit them a little bit better. Arsenal don't have the attacking tools to dismantle Feyenoord in the way that they would have like a month or two ago. But I think both of those matchups could be interesting.
Indeed. All right, one more quick break. When we come back, we'll see how Juventus and Atalanta did and all the rest of the games from this Champions League round. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to our Champions League review. We go now to Holland again. PSV 3, Juventus won a 4-3 win on aggregate for the Dutch here. Ryan Flamingo, great name, scored an extra time winner as PSV produced a superb performance here against Juve to overturn the first leg deficit. Once again, Graham, even Perisic reminding me he is still a professional and getting another great goal for PSV in this one. Tim Weah with a lovely, what turned out to be a consolation, a rocket from distance here. Juve taking it to extra time, but obviously falling at the last hurdle here. But, full credit to PSV, right?
Yeah, impressive performance by PSV, who wanted to get forward quickly. They wanted to isolate Juventus defenders. They did this through Noah Lang, whose career has been a little bit weird to this point. Burst through as a very young player as the next big thing. Then kind of took a meandering route and is now in this PSV team. And on the left side of this attack, he was really effective. He was dribbling past players. He was getting shots away. He was giving Juve trouble throughout this match. And for the Perisic goal, we saw PSV switching play very quickly, which is something they wanted to do. They were, in particular, doing that from left to right to get Perisic into space. 2 incredible goals. You mentioned it, Ryan, but it's worth a quick beat on Perisic. Two incredible goals by Ivan Perisic that were quite similar over the 2 legs, I should say, not in this match. Both of them were quite similar in the way that he was like so quick with that first touch. It's the first touch on both goals that makes it, and then bang, the ball is in the back of the net. So
it's kind of a half volley, this one, wasn't it? Or the touch was in the air, right?
Yeah, it's like he takes it down in the air, then it's sort of bouncing, and then he finishes it. Yeah, so I don't know how old Ivan Perisic is. I don't have his Wikipedia page in front of me right
57.
Now. He's 57, right? So the old man knocking out the old lady, and it's so difficult to work out this Juve team at the moment because they came into this game on the back of their best run of the season. They'd won 4 straight games in all competitions, which was amazingly the first time they had done that. Well, not amazingly. We spoke every week on Week in Review about how they continued to draw games. But they were in good form. They beat Inter at the weekend. I thought they were very impressive in the second half of that game. They beat PSV in the league phase of this competition. And then in the first leg, when I was mildly impressed by them last week, and then they lose this match. And once PSV were able to get through that mid-block in midfield and get at the fullbacks in that Juve team, I just thought Juve always looked very vulnerable in this match. There were some moments for Kolo Muani. There's an opportunity where he kind of like prods it wide, which was an opportunity. Vlahovic hit the post in extra time as well, which would have been classic after I cashed out my Vlahovic stock on a show earlier this week. And I think when you look at this Juve team, there's potential all over the pitch. I can see the building blocks that Thiago Motta wants to put in place. I don't think they're getting enough from their wide players, whether it's Conceição or Yildiz or, in this game, Nico Gonzalez or Bangula, who's had moments this season but consistently isn't really able to put it together. There was a moment late in this game where Juve have, they're 3-1 down, it's the last 5 minutes of extra time, they need a goal, everyone's forward, Bangula's got the ball on the left side. In that moment, you just have to put it in the box. There's no other option. He tries to take on his man, he loses the ball, and then PSV come away in the other direction and waste like another minute of time. I think that sort of sums up the inconsistencies in Bangula's game at the moment. He had some really ragged moment. And the thing is, with those wingers, Juve have spent a lot of money on those players like Nico. Who did I mention? Conceição, Yildiz, Nico Gonzalez, Bangula. Two of them come in the summer, and Yildiz and Bangula are young players who clearly Motta's putting a lot of stock in. So I'm not entirely sure they're going to like rebuild their wide areas in the summer. They just need to get more out of those players. So yeah, that's where I look at this Juve team and feel like they are falling down.
Yeah. So you mentioned Juve having the building blocks for success here, Graham.
Yeah.
Is Thiago Motta the guy you want holding the Lego manual to put those blocks together at this point? How do we feel about what he's done so far? Obviously, I think they've only lost once in Serie A. They've had some really good results, as you mentioned, the Derby d'Italia at the weekend. But also, a lot of it looks quite Allegri-esque in its approach. So it's not been the Motta of Bologna that we've seen so far. What are we thinking?
Yeah, it hasn't at all, and I think that's been the most disappointing thing, is that Juve in an attacking sense have been eerily similar to what we saw under Allegri. I think this Juve team are much better in possession. I think that's where you see the biggest building block is Allegri ball was very much compact and counter. It wasn't a very proactive approach, and I think this Juve team through that midfield of whether it's Locatelli or Cope Miners or Thuram in that midfield unit, or Wes McKennie if he's playing in that unit. He was playing a little bit further forward in this game as more of a number 10. But there is a consistency in the profile of that midfield. They want to have the ball, they want to move it quickly. Ahead of them though, it just feels like they're lacking. Kolo Muani has had a decent impact on this team, and even in this game, I still felt like he offered something as the number 9. He's only on loan until the end of the season. Juve are already making noises about trying to sign him permanently, which I think would be a good decision. But yeah, as an attacking outfit, they're still a long way from where they need to be.
Yes, indeed. All right, PSV going to face either Inter or Arsenal in the next round. So we shall see what goes on in the draw there. Why don't we go, Graham, to Bergamo? Atalanta 1, Club Brugge 3. A 5-2 aggregate win for Bruges in the end here. They scored 3 first-half goals to take down the Italians. They won both legs. The Brugge goal for 3-0 was a lovely rocket.
Yeah.
Love to see those. Sibir Mignolet was superb in this one. He faced 10 shots on target. He had a Schmeichel-esque performance in this midweek as well, including saving a penalty, obviously. We can get to that later in the Atalanta coach's views on the penalty taker, which wasn't great. But can we start, Graham, with the Rafael Toloi red card?
I knew you'd want to start here.
Oh, I love it. So we had Hernandez was a slightly embarrassing situation where he was sent off. But this Toloi red card... He tries to throw a ball at the opponent. He misses. The ball sort of slips out of his hands. He slips over, chases him down, barging past the referee to chase down the opponent before clashing with him and getting his red card. That is the textbook definition of losing your head on the field, is it not?
Oh, it's a career-defining, embarrassing head loss is how I would describe it. It was incredible. I was watching this game live as this moment happened, and it was a laugh out loud moment. And when he looks back, I'd imagine he'll be a little bit red-faced because it's rather humiliating. I mean, the game was gone at that point. Like it didn't actually have the Theo Hernandez one. Is embarrassing and damaging because it effectively knocks AC Milan out of the Champions League. That Atalanta were already out in this game. I think it was 3-1 the scoreline when he gets sent off. So in that sense, not hugely damaging, but for his reputation and his dignity, certainly damaging.
Yeah, definitely so. And Ademola Lookman's career might have taken some slight damage here, obviously taking a penalty which was missed here. And Gasperini, the coach, I haven't got the quote written down, but it was worse to the effect of, why was he taking a penalty? He shouldn't take penalties. He's bad at them.
I think it was worse than that. I think he said, I think the quote is, and I don't have it in front of me either, but it was something to the effect of, he's one of the worst penalty takers in the world, or one of the worst penalty takers I've ever seen. Despite the fact that Ademola Lookman apparently has scored 4 of his last 4, before this penalty, had scored 4 of his last 4 for Atalanta. So, yeah, bit of a messy one there, and Ademola Lookman came out and made a statement after the game and after those quotes from Gasperini, and feels like there's a bit of a fallout from this match, which is not ideal for Atalanta because he is probably their best player. Go on, Ryan, have you found the quote?
I found the quote. The Gasperini quote is great. And this is actually, if you read the Italian, it is what it actually says. The elimination is completely fair. Both teams had chances, but they took theirs. Lookman is one of the worst penalty takers I've ever seen. Even in training, he is bad. Retegui and Teketeler were there, and he took the pen. I didn't like it. Wow. That's rough.
Yeah, to be fair to Ademola Lookman, he I'm just trying to check my notes here. He comes off the bench in this game, right? He didn't start this. He comes off the bench and scores within like a minute to get Atalanta back into the game. And apparently what happened was Retegui, who is the first choice penalty taker, I think Teketeler might be second choice, both of them said to Ademola Lookman, look, you're on a heater right now, you take it. So I do have some sympathy, and he scored 4 out of 4, and so yeah, it feels like Gasperini. Maybe the heat of the moment has got to him there, and I think it'd be wise to maybe apologise to his best player, who scored a hat trick in last season's Europa League final to get Atalanta into the Champions League in the first place.
Yeah, definitely so. And on Bruges, I don't have many notes apart from Simon Mignolet, was amazing here. Like, he basically was a brick wall in this game. Very impressive stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't expect Bruges to come through this tie. I'll start there before I then go on to give myself too much credit. However, when Bruges were playing Man City in the league phase, Ryan, I don't know if you remember this, I dropped a message in our Slack chat saying they are better than people are giving them credit for. They gave City a game in that last league phase match. I watched them against Celtic, was really impressed with them, and we got more proof here that they've got some outstanding players. Talby, I think, is the best of their players, of their young players. He won't be at Bruges for much longer. He was great in this game. He's been great all the way through the Champions League this season. He's a dribbly winger with an eye for goal. Those players tend to attract transfer offers from big clubs, so I suspect he might be on the move in the summer, and he reflects what Bruges want to do as a team. They want to get players forward quickly. They want to take on opponents at speed. And in this game, they went up. They were bold. They went up against the Atalanta back three as often as they could, so they would have 3-on-3 going forward on the attack. And luck was certainly on Bruges' side because there were some moments where Atalanta were hammering at the door. You mentioned, Ryan, the 3-0 goal, which is an excellent finish by Ferran Jutla from outside the box. Directly before that moment, Zappacosta hits the post from close range. Then the rebound gets cleared off the line for Atalanta. Immediately Bruges come up the other end and Jutla sticks one in the bottom corner from like 25 yards out, which sort of summed up how this match went for Atalanta. I think the final scoreline probably flattered Bruges in the end. But yeah, they look, I'm not expecting him to make the final or win the Champions League or anything, but I think they have the potential to be an awkward opponent for someone in the last 16.
Yeah, definitely so. Well, that opponent will be, in the next round, either Aston Villa or Lille. So, arguably, a fairly favourable path for Bruges to...
As these things go, yeah, it's not like Real Madrid or PSG or anything. Yeah, they will think they can make the quarterfinals on the back of this performance.
Yeah, I guess Atalanta used up all their European luck with that tremendous run in the Europa League last season. They're still doing very well domestically as well. They're up in third in Serie A, so they will push on as well. The big sort of takeaway for the Italian perspective after this round, Graham, overnight Italy drops out of the UEFA coefficient top 2. So they're into third now. The top 2 get 5 places in the Champions League next season, as Italy did last year. Maybe not now. Done.
Yeah. Not great. That's not good news for AC Milan and Lazio, I think, are up there as well, who are like 5th or 6th in the table.
Yeah, there's plenty in the chasing pack there who would love to have had that 5th spot, but it is looks like it's out of grasp now, unfortunately, for the Italian sides. A few more games to look through, Graham. Benfica 3, Monaco 3. Benfica going through 4-3 on aggregate. Thrilling draw here in Lisbon. This is one of those games, Graham, where I'd love to see the CBS numbers on who watched which game during any given point, because a 6-goal game where probably it had very little people actually watching it, unfortunately, unless you have a specific Benfica or Monaco sympathy here. That's tough, isn't it?
It is, and this game did seem like a banger. I'm not going to pretend that I watched a huge amount of this match. I saw the goals go in. I was getting the updates on my phone. And I was like, maybe I should turn over to that match. But there's just the way the Champions League is. There's just there were games that I was more interested in. Sad that Monaco are out because they are a young, exciting team. Ben Seguir scored a lovely goal in this game, and someone is going to pay a lot of money for him in the next 18 months. I'm talking like 60 million euros or over for him. And they were I think they'll have real regrets over that first leg where obviously they lose at home. They were so much more aggressive in this second leg and really getting a lot of players forward quickly and pressing Benfica, and Benfica only just managed to squeeze through in the end with that late goal. But yeah, it seemed like an entertaining match.
Yeah, very familiar opponents. Obviously, they played in the league phase, the phasing as well. 3-2 win for Benfica in Monaco in that instance as well. So plenty of goals between these two sides over this competition. Benfica will face either Barcelona or Liverpool in the last 16.
Unlucky.
That could be pretty. Yeah, I was going to say. Rather than me. Barcelona or Liverpool for Benfica when the draw happens on Friday. We'll have Borussia Dortmund in that draw as well. They had a 0-0 draw against Sporting Lisbon. They go through 3-0 on aggregate. This one, a bit of a formality, I think, Graham, after the 3-0 in the first leg. The first shot on target wasn't until the 27th minute here. An odd one from Sporting as well. They had injuries going into this one, and it seemed from the outset they didn't really play like they wanted to score. They're 2 points clear in the domestic league. It seems like they were very much prioritising that rather than throwing all their cards out on the table to try and get a result at the Westfalenstadion here. Dortmund were pretty dominant despite the scoreline. Missed a penalty. That's the story.
If you say so, Ryan Bailey, I'm not going to pretend like I watched a huge amount of this match. I think I caught like 40 seconds of highlights. Yeah. I mean, Sporting, I've watched them a lot this season. I've even watched some of their domestic games as well, because that title race that you mentioned in Portugal is really interesting between three teams that are all deeply flawed. I think two of them have made managerial changes, so that's fairly interesting. Of course, Sporting are one of them. They've made two managerial changes. They're on their second Ruben Amorim replacement, and since he's gone, this team just seems to have lost quite a bit of their verve, quite a lot of their intensity. Gyökeres hasn't been the same force that he was in the kind of first third of the season. So yeah, I think they've got some retooling to do ahead of next season. Of course, a title race to win this season, but yeah. They're probably looking ahead to 2025-26.
All right, yeah, not a classic to write home about by all accounts, that game in Germany. One final game to look at from this round. Woo, PSG 7, Brest 0 in the French derby. We're not calling it that. All French game. A 10-0 aggregate win for PSG. This one, something of a formality as well, given the 3-0 scoreline that PSG took into it, but pretty emphatic. 8 different scorers from those 10 goals as well from PSG. Very impressive stuff from the Parisians, Graham.
Yeah, the second biggest aggregate scoreline ever in a Champions League knockout tie. So congrats to Brest for that. They've left. I can't think what the first was. Just as I was saying there, I was saying that there. I thought I really should know what the
it's not
biggest
like the Barcelona
PSG
is. Was it?
That that was the comeback, right? You're talking about,
or
are you talking about the? Yeah. So I think it's in terms of like the winning margin. 10-0 is the second biggest, but I can't think what first is. Maybe a listener can let us know. Yeah. I also didn't watch this match in full just because the tie was already done after the first leg, and the second leg very quickly became the Simpsons "he's already dead" meme. But I did see enough to know that some of the passing and movement from PSG in this game was outrageous. Combinations stretching the full width of the pitch, little flicks round the corner. I think is it the third goal where Gonzalo Ramos turns his man and then sets up Desiree Doué, I think, that finishes in that moment. Ridiculous goal. And then they would slow the game down in some moments and then instantly quicken it up, and Brest just couldn't cope with that. I'm not sure anyone could have coped with that, quite frankly, the way that PSG were playing in this game and are playing in general right now. And as if having Dembele, Barcola and Doué wasn't enough on the wings, this was the first statement performance that Kvaradona has put in since joining PSG. He grabbed a goal and an assist in this match. He was playing on the left and then on the right, and that fluidity where every forward player is interchanging all the time and they're switching positions and they're dovetailing, just when it works like this, just so incredibly difficult to play against. And Taylor and I did it for Bruges, I'll give myself more credit here, Taylor and I, coming out of the league phase, we both said that PSG were possibly the team to avoid coming out of this last 24 round. I feel pretty good about that prediction at the moment. PSG are looking like a serious force. I think they're going to be right up there as one of the front runners to win this competition.
Well, we've certainly got a tasty round of 16 prospect for them, Graham. They'll have the same potential opponents as the aforementioned Benfica. They'll either get Liverpool or Barcelona in the next round, so that one could be an absolute scorcher, potentially.
Excellent stuff. Like I'm so looking forward to those games, regardless of whether it's Liverpool or Barcelona. I know we've just had Man City and Real Madrid. Man City aren't quite the force of old, as we saw in this second leg in this match. So I think in terms of quality, a PSG versus Barca or Liverpool match could be as good as it gets in this season's Champions League.
All right, there we go. That is our Champions League knockout round playoff second leg roundup. Do love that. They need to work on that, those titles. But Graham, I've been trying my best to be cynical about this new format, but it's all thumbs up, frankly, from where I'm sitting. I think the league phase worked really well, and as I mentioned earlier, we've got a good diversity of round of 16. I don't know whether it's due to the nature of the format, but we've got, as we mentioned, Dutch teams. We've got Portuguese team in the final. A good mix going on there as well.
Yeah.
So really good.
Yeah, I mean, it's not all down to the format. I mean, the format didn't make Theo Hernandez dive inside the box for AC Milan. Well, maybe it did. Maybe it's got powers that we don't know of. But yeah, I would agree. I think this season's Champions League has been entertaining. Let's hope we get a classic kind of latter stages of this competition, and we get some big games in those quarterfinals and semi-finals into the final.
Yeah, there you go. I'm loath to sort of congratulate UEFA, and they have put more games on the top teams here as a burden, but still. Could have been worse. Could have gone worse.
Could have been worse, yeah.
There we go. Which is how I end most of the podcast performances that I have. Graham Ruthven, thank you very much indeed for your Champions League nous in this here podcast. We'll reconvene for Champions League action next month. Only a month away. Wow.
I thought you were going to say... See, if you told me, Ryan, it was next week, I would have believed you. That's how it's felt with the Champions League this season. Thank you.
Next month is nearly next week, so...
That's true.
Yeah.
2 weeks. It's probably 2 weeks.
Probably. Yeah. Anyway, we look forward to the draw happening on Friday. Thank you very much, listener, for joining us on this episode. One more time, patreon.com/Total Soccer Show. If you would like to support this here endeavour, thank you very much to everybody who does so. We'll be back on the feed very shortly, but for now, bye!